Good evening. I'm Len Tenges, Chairman of the Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District Rate Commission. I will be presiding over the public hearing this evening. With me tonight are the following MSD Rate Commission members: Mark Shadle and Russell Hawes. Tonight's public hearing is being live streamed and can be viewed online at stlmsd.com/Rate Commission or on Facebook at MSD Rate Commission. For ratepayers viewing the hearing online, we will be taking comments on Facebook at MSD Rate Commission, on Twitter at MSD Rate Commission, and by email at ratecommission@stlmsd.com. The charter plan of the district was amended at a general election on November 7th, 2000, and established the Rate Commission to review and make recommendations to the district regarding changes in wastewater rates, stormwater rates, and tax rates proposed by the district. The charter plan requires the MSD Board of Trustees to select organizations to ensure a fair representation of all users of the district services on the Rate Commission. The Rate Commission representative organizations are to represent commercial industrial users, residential users, and other organizations interested in operation of the district, including organizations focusing on environmental issues, labor issues, socioeconomic issues, community neighborhood organizations, and other nonprofit organizations. The MSD Rate Commission currently consists of 15 members from organizations and institutions throughout St. Louis City and County. The Rate Commission received a rate change notice from the district on March 4th, 2019. Under the district's charter plan, the Rate Commission must, on or before July 2nd, 2019, issue its report on the proposed rate change notice to the Board of Trustees of the district, unless the Board of Trustees, upon application of the Rate Commission, extends the period of time for the issuance of the Rate Commission report for an additional 45-day period. At its meeting on March 14th, 2019, the Board of Trustees approved the Rate Commission's request for an extension. The Rate Commission's report on the rate change proposal must now be issued on or before August 16th, 2019. The Rate Commission has engaged legal counsel and a rate consultant independent of those used by the MSD staff. Under procedural rules adopted by the Rate Commission as amended, any person affected by the rate change proposal had an opportunity to submit an application to intervene in these proceedings. An application to intervene has been filed by Missouri Industrial Energy Consumers, and this application has been granted. Since March 4th, 2019, the Rate Commission has received testimony from MSD staff, the rate consultant, and the interveners. The parties have also engaged in discovery requests. A pre-hearing conference for the purpose of identifying any issues raised by the rate-setting documents and the prepared testimony previously submitted will be conducted on the record. All persons submitting testimony may participate in the pre-hearing conference, and each participant in the pre-hearing conference shall submit a pre-hearing conference report describing the issues raised by the rate-setting documents and the prepared testimony, together with a brief description of such participants' position, if any, on each issue and the rationale therefor. Ratepayers who do not wish to intervene are permitted to participate in these on-the-record public hearings conducted in 6 sessions, which started on May 14th, 2019. After tonight's public hearing session, there are 4 public hearings remaining. The Rate Commission published a public notice regarding these proceedings in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch and the St. Louis American. These notices contain the time, dates, and location of each of the conferences and hearings. The public hearing session tonight is for the purpose of permitting the district to present its wastewater rate change proposal and to permit any ratepayer an opportunity to comment. We will begin with a presentation by the district, followed by a public comment period. The district will be presenting a lot of information, and I ask that attendees hold their questions until the end of the comment period, as perhaps many of your initial questions will be answered by the conclusion of the presentation. Those wishing to speak should sign in on the rate sheet provided over here by the door and will be called in the order their names are listed thereon. Each ratepayer should identify themselves and any organizations represented by such ratepayer. We will also take comments from ratepayers on Facebook at MSD Rate Commission, on Twitter at Rate Commission, and by email at ratecommission@stlmsd.com. There are several housekeeping rules before we begin. If you wish to present testimony or expect that you may have questions, comments, again a reminder, please sign in by the clipboard to the entrance of the room. For those online, send your questions or comments via Facebook, Twitter, or email. Speakers will be recognized in the order in which they sign up. Each ratepayer may have a maximum of 10 minutes to speak regarding the proposed rate change. As a presiding officer, I can limit or expand the time should I deem it necessary. If you haven't already done so, please put your cell phones on silent, on vibrate. Emergency exits from the room are located on the left and right sides of the room. Restrooms are located across the hallway outside these two doors to my left. Are there any questions from anyone here regarding the proceedings? Any online? Is the district ready to proceed?
So you are, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Holscher, please proceed.
Thank you. Brian Holscher, I'm the Executive Director and CEO of the Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District. I'm going to give you a proposal on MSD's proposed wastewater rate proposal for rates that will be effective from the summer of 2000 through the summer of 2020 through the summer of 2024. I'm going to give you a one-page, real quick overview of MSD, just so we have some knowledge about MSD, and then I'll go into the details of the rate proposal. For the overview, MSD is a government utility. We are created by a provision of the state constitution. We're a municipal corporation. We have a voter-approved charter, which is our organic law. Those are the laws that we have to follow in running the district. We have a 6-member board of trustees. 3 of those are selected by the mayor of the city of St. Louis, and 3 by the county executive of St. Louis County. It's important to remember we are 2 utilities in one. It's probably more important in this particular rate proposal than it's been in the past. We are a wastewater utility and we are a stormwater utility. We're here this evening to talk about the wastewater side of our business. Both of those 2 different businesses have a different source of revenues, different set of activities. We track the cost and the services differently. So we just had an election in April asking our customers whether or not they want us to provide a new stormwater service. Folks elected not to have another stormwater service. That is not what we're talking about tonight. What we are talking about is the wastewater, what goes down the drain when you flush the toilet or when you use your washing machine or when you use your showers. We'll be talking about those. I would ask when we get to the question period that Chairman Tenjus had mentioned, we'd ask that you ask us questions during this proceedings about wastewater. If you have other questions, we've got a lot of MSD staff here, as well as any other source of questions we've got. After the meeting, they're here and they can answer any questions you have if you have questions other than those around wastewater. Service area is 520 square miles. That's the city of St. Louis and about 85% of the county, west out to about Highway 109 in Wildwood. There's 88 municipalities located within our service area. We run 7 treatment plants. They treat an average of 350 million gallons of sewage a day. We have just about 10,000 miles of pipe if you consider the sanitary sewers, the combined sewers, and the storm sewers. And that makes MSD in sewers the 4th largest wastewater utility in the country. We'll talk about the wastewater rates. MSD's proposal includes funding almost $1.6 billion of capital work over the next 4 years. There's 300 projects that make up this list. They are meant to meet regulatory requirements as well as permit requirements. The primary driver is the consent decree, which is an agreement we made with the federal government, the Department of Justice, EPA, and the Coalition for the Environment on how fast we have to resolve the issues that exist in the wastewater system. In that capital program over those next 4 years, we plan on eliminating 50 additional overflows from our wastewater system. The system exists right now when there's too much flow due to rainwater getting in a separate sanitary system. That water either goes into basements or else it discharges to local creeks and streams. We are under a mandate to eliminate the basement backups as well as to eliminate the overflows into the creeks and streams. It'll include the construction of 60 miles of new wastewater sewers. We will inspect 64,000 manholes during that 4-year period. The sanitary manholes you see, oftentimes they are sources of storm water, whether it's surface water that gets in through the manhole lid or sometimes groundwater that comes in through the walls of the manholes. We will replace the incinerators at Bissell and Limay treatment plant. These 2 sites, we take the biosolids that result from the treatment process and we burn those and we use the residual ash as well as the heat to help run our plants and to provide a marketable material. And finally, one of the other bigger projects, we will build a tunnel from the Fenton treatment plant to Lower Merrimack. That'll do 2 things for us. One, it will take the Fenton treatment plant offline, which is important for 2 reasons. One, it is in the floodplain of the Merrimack River. It's been threatened twice in the last 5 years due to flooding, but also the removal of that plant and the construction of that tunnel is necessary for us to also remove the overflows that are in the wastewater system that currently flow to the treatment plant. So with those costs, I'm just kind of going over what's in the capital program. What we're proposing, that capital program represents over 50% of the planned expenditures over the next 4 years. That other 45% consists of debt service, which is about 20% of the proposal, and the rest is our operation and maintenance costs, which are just about 25% of the overall revenue needs. There are some key considerations. The first one are charter requirements. The staff, which prepared the proposal, the rate commission, which needs to review that proposal and give to our board of trustees, and our board of trustees, who need to review the recommendations from the rate commission, have 5 factors they need to consider in this rate proposal. The first, the rate proposal has to be consistent with constitutional, statutory, or common law as amended from time to time. The second item, it needs to enhance the district's ability to provide adequate sewer and drainage system facilities or related services. The third, it must be consistent with and not in violation of any covenant or provision relating to any outstanding bond or indebtedness of the district. Cannot impair the ability of the district to comply with applicable federal or state laws or regulations as are amended from time to time. And it must impose a fair and reasonable burden on all classes of ratepayers. This last item is the one that staff and the rate commission and our board of trustees spend the most time on in reviewing. You will see 2 options. You will see an option to pay for this program that is mandated by the federal government. We will give you 2 options. One, you can pay for it just with cash. We can just take the revenues we collect directly from your bills over the next 4 years and pay for this program. We'll also offer another option to request whether or not the ratepayers would like to authorize additional bonding authority for MSD. It's somewhat similar to buying a house. If you paid cash for a house, it costs a lot more up front, but you don't pay interest expense. If we buy bonds, it does help control rates in the short term, but then you have to pay that interest back as well. We'll offer both of those options to the ratepayers. Needs to be affordable. It's one of the things we're constantly monitoring. I'll mention later some things MSD has done to try and make this as affordable as possible. It needs to also be equitable. We need to make sure that everybody's paying their fair share. There's some underlying items that you would see in the rate proposal. We're making assumptions on customer growth, assumptions on water usage, assumptions on inflation, consent decree compliance, meeting the goals and the deadlines that are in the consent decree drive a big part of what we're doing. And also there's the customer assistance program for low-income individuals. Low-income individuals will be able to take advantage of what we call the CAP program, included in this next rate proposal. Our current program, if you qualify as low income, we charge you half the rate that we charge everybody else. That program would still apply as we move forward. Here's the important information. What are we proposing for rates? So first of all, I want to just have a quick discussion about what it is we measure when we bill you. So what we measure is potable water usage. We use that as being representative of what goes down the drain and what ends up in our sewer system. If you are in a house that has a meter on it, a water meter on it, what we will do is we will take your winter water usage, your potable water usage, either November through January, that 3-month period, or December through February. It just depends when we start the measurements. We'll take that 3-month reading. That will be the volume we assume that you sewer throughout the entire year. What we don't want to include, because it doesn't go down the sewer, filling swimming pools, washing cars, watering grass, watering gardens. We don't want to charge you for that. It doesn't go down the sewer. That's a methodology to make sure we're as close as possible to making sure just what goes down the sewer and what we have to ultimately transport and treat. If you don't have a meter, and there are individuals who live in the city of St. Louis, residents who don't have meters, we charge them by attributes. It's the same way they pay for water service in the city of St. Louis, based on the number of bedrooms, water closets, other factors, kitchens. Those all have a flow rate associated with them. It's the same way the city of St. Louis pays for water. It's the same type of volume charge. So we use that data, and that's the way we would bill folks in the city, is based on that volume conversion. That's the volume we would charge them all 12 months. So for those of you with meters, we mentioned we would use the winter quarter, get that usage. Any of those changes get reflected for the first time in your August billing. So even though we collect them over the winter, we want to make sure we have the right data, and the first time you see those billings are in August. That's the first billing after the start of our fiscal year. So that being the way we collect the data, what you see up here is what we're proposing. And the first one I'm going to concentrate is on the light blue. MSD is requesting, we're going to give you two options. One is to provide additional bonding capacity. If you vote in MSD to provide additional bonding capacity, what will happen with the rates is located on the light blue bars. So whatever rate you are paying starting on August 2020, that's the start of our next fiscal year, the increases will consist of a 1.9% increase in 2021, a 3.8% increase in 2022, 3.8% increase in 2023, and a 3.8% increase in 2024. There's another chart that's very similar to what I show up on the presentation that you can find on these one-page handouts as well. So if voters approve bonding, additional bonding, that's what the rates will be. For our typical customer, not all of you pay this, but the typical customer in MSD in 2021 with a 1.9% increase would be paying $56.63 per month. The increase then in 2022 would result in an average rate per month of $58.78, in 2023, $61.02, and in 2024, $63.36. Again, everybody's would be different. If you want to really see your impact, you need to take what you currently pay on a monthly basis and increase it by 1.9% the first year and then 3.8% the rest of the years. There is also an option, because we'll ask the voters whether or not they want to provide additional bonding authority, they have the option of saying no. We don't want to. If you indicate that, we still have to do the program. We are required by the federal government to do the program. We will then just use the revenues you pay, and that will pay for the program for the next 4 years. The impact there is a little bit different. If you look on the chart, in the first year, there'd be a 1.9% increase. Whenever we do a rate proposal, we make sure the first year increase under either scenario is the same amount. That gives us some flexibility as when we go to the polls and ask the voters whether or not they want to give us additional bonding authority. But after that, the rates will go up faster. 2022, they would raise 15.1% if the voters decide not to offer additional bonding authority. 2023, they would go up 17.1%, and in 2024, they would go up 13.1%. So under the bonding scenario, where MSD gets additional bonding from 2021 to 2024, your rates go from $56.63 on average per month to $63.36. If you decide not to give MSD additional bonding authority, you start from $56.63 in 2021, and it goes up to $86.29 per month for the average customer in 2024. That's a decision that the voters will be able to make, which option they would like to move forward with in paying for the program. Excuse me. What has MSD done to help reduce cost? Well, there's 4 items here. I mentioned the consent decree, the agreement we have with the federal government. We've got an amendment to that provision. There's some regulatory changes that gave us the opportunity to make things much more affordable in the future. We've lowered our O&M expenses. We brought our capital program in on time and under budget. And also, our finance people have done a very good job of financing the program and using different options to refinance the program. What did those savings look like? So in the last 4 years, from 2017 through 2020, we've saved about $27 million from what we thought our cost would be for debt. That's mostly through refinancing of our debt. Some of those options have gone away with the change in the tax laws, but our Secretary Treasurer and our Director of Finance will keep looking for ways to continue doing that in the future. Capital program came in $110 million under budget. A lot of that has to do with we've had a very long program. We got a lot of folks that are working here, a lot of people fighting for this work. We're getting some very, very good prices in a lot of areas of our program. As long as we do our job and make sure it's a level playing field and let people want to come and bid, we'll keep getting those lower prices. So we're $110 million under there. For operation and maintenance, for the last 4 years, we came in $43 million under budget. A lot of that had to do with technological changes. One of the things we changed, excuse me just a minute. Has to do, their technological changes. One example of that is when we inspect sewers. We have to regularly inspect them to make sure they're not blocked up. If they get blocked up, they can cause overflows and basement backups. Used to be we would go in, we would have to TV it, use a jetter to clean the line out. That was a 4-person with a big piece of equipment operation to do that. We checked out some new technologies, and now we're able to just simply pop a manhole lid, put a transmitter and a receiver on one manhole, and a transmitter on one manhole, a receiver on the other end, shoot an ultrasonic signal through, and based on the strength of that signal, we can tell how clean that pipe is. It allows us to do things with a much smaller crew, and we get a lot more production. Those types of things carry over to the next year as well and are already reflected in the cost. And then finally, the impact of the 2018 consent decree. There was a regulatory change. I had mentioned we are replacing our incinerators. There's a regulatory change outside the consent decree that required us to move that work up 5 years. In order to accommodate that, that would have put an excessive burden in the next rate proposal on our ratepayers. We went to the EPA and the Department of Justice, and we got a 5-year extension on our consent decree. So we're doing basically the same amount of work, just instead of 23 years, we have 28 years to do it. And that also helps reduce the amount of the, helps reduce the amount, excuse me, of the increases over the next 4 years. So what's really important about that, there's two things. One, if we have done some savings that are sustainable and can be applied to this year, it's reduced our cost up front. Anything else that we've saved in the previous 4 years go back in our general fund, and it's a first source of funds that we tap in order to pay for the next 4 years. So it's helping reduce rates. We don't have stockholders. We don't have dividends to pay. I guarantee you we don't give bonuses. The only place we have for that money to go is back to the ratepayers, and that's what we do every one of these 4-year cycles. Any savings we have, we give that back to the ratepayer, resulting in lower rates. Excuse me. So the schedule, MSD submitted its wastewater rate proposal to the Rate Commission on March 4th, 2019. The chairman just gave you some idea of what activities have gone on so far and where you can look to see the future activities. They are required to submit a report to our board by August 19, 2019, indicating what their recommendations are with regard to MSD staff's rate proposal. Whatever those decisions come out, right now we are planning on putting those rate changes in effect on July 1, 2020, which means any changes would show up on your August 2020 bill. It's the first time you would see them. Now, I mentioned that we don't know how we're going to pay for it. That's up to the ratepayers, whether we just use the rates that you pay us or whether we borrow more money. We have a lot of different dates, somewhere between spring 2020 through spring 2021, as to when we can go to the voters and find out whether or not they want to give us additional bonding authority. We're simply going to monitor what else is going on. We're going to make sure we find an opportunity that we can go out and make sure all the voters are educated on what choice they're making. We won't advocate for one option or the other. It's up to the voters, but we want to pick a time where we make sure we have the best opportunity we can possible to educate the voters and let them know what it is they're voting on. This is a list of the Rate Commission public hearings. You happen to be attending the second one on this list. This is also on the Rate Commission's website. We will be giving exactly this presentation at these other meetings as well. And before I pass it back on to the chairman, again, I would let you know that if you have questions other than on the wastewater rate proposal, such as billing questions or questions about stormwater, we do have staff here, and after this hearing, we'll stay as long as is necessary to ask any questions you have about issues that are outside of this proposal. Mr. Chairman, that's the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Holscher. I think the signatures are being collected from folks here in the room who wish to make a statement or ask a question. So as soon as I get that list, we'll move forward with taking questions from attendees, and then we'll do the online questions. First person who is listed to ask some questions or make a comment is Barbara Biondo. Barbara, please come up to the microphone so you can be heard, and we will do our best to respond accurately.
Okay. My first question is you have this rate proposal that you want to give to us people in St. Louis County. Why isn't the water measurements done the same as in the county as in the city? I don't understand why it has to be different than in the city than in the county.
Let me start with this, and then I will ask Mr. Holscher to elaborate if I'm incorrect. The billing system for the water usage is different in the city and the county. In the city water is provided by the city, and the city bills it based on, as Mr. Holscher said, the number of sinks, the number of toilets, the number of bathtubs, and that is a city service that is provided by the city, billed to the city, and they don't meter the homes or residences. In St. Louis County, the properties are metered by
Right.
Missouri American Water, and and those folks pay directly to Missouri American Water. So there are two different delivery systems for clean water into the residences in the city and the county. Is that accurate?
That is, I think I'll only expand on the reason for that. It's
Okay.
not mechanically possible to actually measure the wastewater that leaves your home. It's under gravity and small 8-inch,
Okay.
6-inch. There's no way to actually do that. So we use the water usage and the two methods that the chairman described as a substitute for what would go down the drain.
Okay.
Now, in case some of you maybe anticipate a future question, that's why when we get questioned on how much we bill you, if you've ever been in that situation, all our data comes from the water providers.
Okay,
So we always, when we get an appeal, we always then have to turn around and go to the water providers or
Okay.
have you help us go to the water providers to make
Okay.
any corrections. We're making adjustments all the time.
Right.
But our only source of data is the water providers.
okay. My other part of my question is, after you do all these improvements, then our rates should be going down. Because you're doing, these projects that you want to do. You want to fix the incinerators at Lee May and in Bissell, which, in my opinion, should have been done a long time ago. I just saw an episode on TV, it was either Channel 5 or Channel 4, about the waste that's coming out of those stacks. You've got kids that got asthma, that are going to schools and stuff like that. People down in Lee May are having health problems. This should have never been done in these areas where there's schools and populations. It should have been shut down a long, long time ago, and you guys should be ashamed of yourselves to keep letting this go on like it is. When you got kids and people that are getting sick, there's no reason you should be burning waste and stuff like that in areas where people and kids are living. You should be ashamed of yourselves, and you should have had, the EPA should have come in and shut these things down a long time ago, and you should have been doing something else, somewhere else. I mean, Illinois doesn't burn this stuff, and we in Missouri should be ashamed of ourselves for doing these things to people, especially little kids that are going to school. And I don't have anything else to say.
Okay. I do need to
So-
respond to that. I would ask that Sean Hadley is here, right, our director. The data and information that was presented on Channel 5 is very misleading. And the way we're going to counter that is we'll show you what the actual rest of the interview was that they didn't show you on that set.
Okay.
You will find that what you've described is the impression we knew people would have when they ran this story, which is
Okay.
why we taped all the interviews. We knew this was coming.
Okay.
I will let you know all those incinerators, both the old ones we had, as well as we're planning on upgrading technologies and still incinerating.
Right.
We're still going to be doing that because it's the safest for the environment and safest for all the folks for us to dispose of this sludge.
Right.
And we're doing it under permit from EPA and MDNR, and we are meeting permit requirements so that we don't impact the health of the residents. We have heard the issue about why can't you just not incinerate in Illinois? We try. We have 7 treatment plants. There's 1 medium size and 1 small that we try to land apply our end product as much as we can, but we run out of space. That includes in Illinois. Part of the problem is how large the metropolitan area is. When you add both health and cost together, incineration is absolutely the best option. So I would ask, however much more information you'd like, Sean, raise your hand again. So get with Sean and he can get you all the information you want on exactly what
Okay.
the interview consists of,
Okay.
and he can give you an awful lot of facts
Okay,
as well.
well, I'll backtrack my thing then, because.
Well, don't backtrack till you see our information.
Well,
I'll
they
let you
should
do-
have said, Channel 5 and Channel 4 should have put everything out there then, as opposed to making you guys look bad the whole time. I mean, that's not fair. If you're gonna run a story like that, then you should put all the facts out there.
Well, they've got a job to do, and we just
Okay.
made sure we got all the data as well.
All right. Thank you very much for
Thank you.
listening to me.
Well, Barbara, thank you for your comments. I'd also like to point out that on the Rate Commission, the Coalition for the Environment and the Missouri Botanical Garden are some of the folks who are on the Rate Commission. So there are folks who are concerned about the environmental concerns that you expressed as part of our group
right.
also. So thank you
Okay.
so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
All right, thank you. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Number 2 on our list of folks here in the room is Tish Hannewinkle. Tish? You may pass it to whoever you care to. Chris Hanwinkle. Chris, thanks for being here.
You're welcome. I just wonder if there's not a little more information as far as what's the better option for the customer when it comes to a bond or a rate increase. As the previous lady said, you know, eventually we'll get beyond this, and is the pain of the higher rate per month, if you pay as you go, is it 4 years later, then it's reassessed again because that 4-year period is over and the projects are done? Or, I mean, how does that end? And then you've got something to compare it to if you're looking at a bond, and how long does that bond go on? So I think the voters are going to need to understand that.
I think in some of the content that is in the booklets there that are on the table, when the rate commission receives a rate proposal, there is a little bit of a future projection, not just for this rate case. I think the rate cases are normally on a 4-year cycle.
Correct.
But as the rate commission is trying to make that determination, we look at a number of factors. There is an additional 4-year projection in the case that's given to us. So that is part of we look at not just the, what is coming out of people's pockets, but what's the size of the capital program? Is that in alignment with the consent decree or not? What is the impact on the following 4 years? This extension of the consent decree that Mr. Holscher mentioned did have a significant impact on this particular rate case with that 5-year extension, that projects could be spread over a longer time period. That's why we have a public vote to let the public make that determination about temporary pain or a longer term lesser pain. So that's a tough call, but it is in the rate proposal, and perhaps something we should include. Those are free for the take. It's all up online also
Okay.
on the rate case website,
Okay.
on the rate commission website.
So,
Just to and expand on that a little further, you're right. We will reach a place to understand all this work. This work doesn't end until 2039. Now it starts humping and you know start decreasing. You're right. Somewhere in the 2030 range, somewhere, we are going to reach a point where the decision is going to come, and it depends on what the folks decide, whether they want to pay go or whether they want to borrow money. Where the flattening or decreasing of rate is something that's going to have to be evaluated in the same way. And as the rates are going down, you'll have the same decision there. Do I want to borrow money or do I want to do this? When we do the informational outreach, that'll be one of the main focuses that we'll give to the voters to let them understand. Again, the rate proposal does have, and we do them in 4-year blocks. So 21 through 24, we've given an unrefined outlook for 25 through 28. That's in the rate proposal. And we know that we're going to get somewhere around the 2031, 2032, 2033, where we're going to get where rates are going to start plateauing. And then the discussion will become a little bit different. Right now, for this rate cycle and the next, we know we've got some increases that plus or minus are about inflation, and then things are going to start to decrease. And when we go out to the voters, we'll make sure we have some additional information so they really understand what's going on in the future.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hanwinkle. The third person in the room who has their name on the list is Mr. McGraw.
Please excuse my voice. I've had cancer, and it makes it tough to talk.
Thank you for being
But
here.
I was just, the same thing in the city and the county. Do you merge the sewer plants?
I will,
Is
as
it-
far as the
Is the
treatment
sewer
areas.
coming in mutual places from the city and the county? Because I see the
there's
city
some
all the time.
overlapping
They will
treatment
have
areas.
their fire hydrants open all day so they can cool down. And I know, that's going somewhere.
So MSD has 5 major watersheds. 4 of those are served by individual plants.
Yeah.
And one along the Merrimack River has got 3 plants are currently activating. That makes the 7 plants we have. Our boundaries, our municipal boundaries, again, are, as I explained earlier, kind of everything from the Mississippi River out to about 109. None of the treatment plants treat just the city or the county. The
Okay.
watersheds that we operate in, they don't follow municipal boundaries. And nobody drew the municipal boundaries to match the watersheds. So the Bissell wastewater treatment plant, which is located in Grand, it serves North County and it serves part of North City. The Limay treatment plant that's to the south, it serves part of South City. It also serves part of West and near Southwest County. The Merrimack plants, the plants along the Merrimack. Coldwater treatment plant is everything to the very far north near Coldwater Creek. And then we have a Missouri River treatment plant for everything that flows to the Missouri River.
So the city can put in as much water as they want and just go on a basic pay. Right?
Well, so what we just described, when we do billing for residential customers, only in the city, only residential customers are not metered. All the businesses, all the commercial entities, they are metered, and we bill them in the same way based on their actual water usage.
Okay.
And that's where your extra water would come from. So when I was mentioning the metered and non-metered, we're really focusing this presentation on the residential customers. There's a difference. When you get to non-residential customers, apartment complexes, commercial, industrial, any of those kind of users, we're actually using metered data and basing the charge based on the amount of potable water they actually use on a monthly basis.
I'd just like to comment on that for a minute, and again, this is, everything that you heard tonight is residential. When we get into the rate case hearings, if you heard me say earlier, the one intervener we have is Missouri Industrial Energy Consumers. Those are folks like Anheuser-Busch, or some of the large chemical plants that really have a significant amount of water usage. And because of that, look for ways to mitigate that discharge and mitigate the impact on the district. So I understand what you're saying about the fire hydrants, but once you get past the residential, everything is on a meter and everything is measured consistently in the city and the county.
So the fire hydrants are measured?
Well, the city's not the only place that turns the fire hydrants on during the summer. We have that everywhere. So we do see that issue throughout the entire service area.
Well, most places like Baldwin, and we have places you can go to swim, and they pay for that. We don't open up, in Clinton, we don't open up hydrants, and I'm sure LSL don't. And I'm just, wondering. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. McGraw. Let us move to our electronic questioners.
Yes, Chairman Tengens. Just a reminder that we have 3 ways that if you're viewing us online tonight that you can ask questions. If you're on Facebook, which is at MSD Rate Commission, you can ask a question right there as you're watching us. Or if you'd like to comment on Twitter, our handle is at Rate Commission. You can also send us an email this evening and we'll answer your question. It's ratecommission@stlmsd.com. And we do have a few questions from people who've been watching tonight, and also some people who have commented on Facebook in the days leading up to today's hearing. Carl on Facebook asks, why does it cost more to handle the water runoff than it does to have fresh water pumped to my house?
So I guess, and when we say runoff, just so we understand, this is not regarding stormwater. This rate is not with regard to runoff. It's with regard to what you flush down the toilet. So I really think my first easy, quick answer is to just think about what you think the cost would be to turn river water into drinkable water versus what it costs to take what goes down the toilet, what goes down the drain, and make it acceptable to go back into the river. It simply costs more. Now in MSD's case, with regard to potable water, there's a little bit bigger difference because as I indicated, MSD is the 4th largest sewer utility in the country with regard to miles of pipe. And that results in just larger cost. If we were going to build St. Louis from scratch today, we would not have the underground sanitary sewer system we do now, but we have what we have. The water companies, they work under pressure. It allows them to be much more cost effective with the way they distribute potable water. The sewer entities, especially in St. Louis, mostly work on gravity, and we've got existing systems that we have to maintain. So that's the reason for it. It just simply costs more to clean the water that comes out of your house, to put back in the river, and meet permits that the EPA requires us to clean it to a certain degree than it does take to take water out of primarily the Mississippi River and provide it to your homes for drinking water.
And I guess I would answer that question slightly differently. It really does not cost more to treat the runoff because the runoff is the stormwater portion of the bill, not the wastewater portion of the bill. And if you look at the stormwater charges for MSD and what you actually pay to treat the runoff, which is a stormwater portion, it is significantly less than your freshwater bill. So I would suggest that it probably costs much less to treat stormwater, much less to get rid of stormwater and much more to treat wastewater.
All right, we have
If Carl were here, I'd say, is that okay? But since he's not, we'll move on.
Right. Nick on Facebook asks, or says, MSD's infrastructure is already built, so what are you doing with the money that you collect? And again, he may not have seen your presentation earlier, so Chairman.
I'll take a run at that, and certainly any of the other rate commissioners can jump in. Yes, it is already built in the determination of the United States Environmental Protection Agency. What is built and what is there is not sufficient to meet today's environmental standards and needs some significant upgrades. Mr. Holscher mentioned the consent decree that was negotiated with the Missouri Department of Natural Resources, Coalition for the Environment, the Environmental Protection Agency, and MSD. Those 4 entities entered into an agreement to look at what's already built and what needed to be done to the system that was built in some instances 60, 70, 80 years ago before there was an EPA, and bring that up to the standards that folks expect now to make sure that our rivers and streams are safer than they were at that point.
I think you said it well. I think people don't understand that MSD was created to help manage a lot of infrastructure that was installed many years ago to different standards than we have today, let alone the combined sewers where we're trying to put stormwater and wastewater together, which is not a good idea, where you have the overflows. So there's a lot of issues with the infrastructure's there, but it wasn't designed properly. We still have some, I believe, wood pipes that are passing sewage around as well.
In fact, we had a question about that very thing. Someone said that some of the pipes with the wood included. Why do we have to repair sewers now that are so very, very old?
Well, part of that reason, I would say, has to do with history and the evolution and people's willingness to, in fact, invest in the infrastructure. I would suggest that probably without the consent decree, I question how much people would be willing to invest in the infrastructure even today. It's largely a problem that is out of sight, out of mind, I think, in a lot of people's minds from the perspective of the Rate Commission, and we just, I think, experienced that with the stormwater case that the Rate Commission went through. A lot of deliberations about the stormwater case. That was an elective imposition of a fee to improve the quality of life and mitigate some flooding. and the voters decided that was not something that they cared to invest in. That being said, the flooding will continue. The stormwater system will continue to exist it is, and perhaps 10 or 15 years from now, somebody may ask, well, why didn't MSD fix that 15 years ago? And I would suggest that the answer would probably be that that was not a decision that MSD made, but a decision that the voters made.
Let me, little background on this. I want to make sure everybody understands the EPA and Department of Justice are not picking on St. Louis. All the cities were doing work in order to try and meet the Clean Water Act. For some of the reasons the chairman mentioned, the Department of Justice and EPA decided to pursue a strategy, and they've done this to over 200 cities throughout the United States, MSD being one of the last ones, St. Louis MSD, to sue in order to meet the Clean Water Act and put exact schedules and exact performance criteria in place in a court enforceable document. So we aren't the only ones that were meeting the Clean Water Act. I will tell you, just about everybody has a problem with the Clean Water Act and water. That was a strategy. That's why we are where we are now. Quite honestly, our burden is a little less. We're somewhat lucky that we don't have beaches. We are somewhat lucky that we have rivers that have a pretty good volume of water. It allows us a lot more options to be much more cost effective with some of our potential solutions than other municipalities. But don't think that they're just going after MSD. MSD's been addressing this issue since it got created by the voters in 1954. We're going along at a pace that matched, we were spending as many dollars as we got to correct these issues. The federal government just got impatient with how fast cities throughout the country are addressing these and decided to use the court-type documents in order to enforce those.
Any comments from?
Just
Continue
a
on.
reminder, if you're viewing us online tonight, you can ask us a question on Facebook, Twitter, or email. Facebook is at MSD Rate Commission. Twitter is at Rate Commission. Email is ratecommission@stlmsd.com. We had a commenter on Facebook tonight who said, I'll paraphrase, no means no. I assume that's referring to the stormwater vote in April. Have you considered cutting your top employees' pay?
So again, as you said, no means no was for the optional service in April for stormwater. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about wastewater. As far as being cost effective, which is the way I'll take that question, you will find in the rate proposal we are constantly comparing ourselves to other wastewater utilities and the cost effectiveness of our services. You'll find in almost every case we are in the top 1/4 of being cost effective with the way we are providing services. With regard to salaries, I will let you know that every 10 years we do a study. We compare it to the salaries that are being paid in our industry throughout the Midwest, and we adjust our salaries accordingly. We are traditionally, especially for the higher paid and professional employees, we try to keep that below what the weighted average is for the city of St. Louis, and we've done a good job of doing that. So that is something we're cognizant of. We're making sure we pay, we want to pay people the proper amount for the work they're doing, but we definitely don't want to pay them an extravagant amount. And we put a lot of processes in place to make sure that doesn't happen. It's something, again, we formally look at every 10 years as part of our charter, but also then we are required every 4 years to bring those cost effectiveness type issues also to the Rate Commission for consideration.
I would answer that question that Mr. Holscher does not set his pay or the pay of the other folks at the sewer district. The Rate Commission does not establish the pay or those who work at the sewer district. Those pay rates are set by the trustees, 3 appointed by the mayor of the city of St. Louis, 3 appointed by St. Louis County, and those are the folks that make those pay determinations.
Very good. Another person tonight on Facebook comments, you don't pay for sewers in Valley Park. Taxpayers paid for new sewers. You don't clean out the river, and that's where our water goes. Any clarification on that?
You want me to do it?
Mr. Holsham.
So the charter that was approved by the ratepayers in our district have laid out the process. You're right. MSD does not pay to construct new sewers around new development. That cost lands on the ratepayers. However, as required by our charter, we inspect and do a plan approval process for every new sewer that goes in the ground, and we're talking wastewater here. And then once that goes in the ground, the developer of that product is then mandated to turn those over for the operation and maintenance by MSD. It's the operation and maintenance of the sewers, it's the operation and maintenance of any pump stations that go in place, and hopefully there isn't any place in Valley Park where the wastewater sewers are discharging to the river. I will guarantee you they are all going to our treatment plants. We are treating the waste, and then we are discharging that waste to the local creeks and streams.
Any other comments?
Andy on Facebook asks, so there is a cost savings from what the rate was projected to be 4 years ago, is that correct?
Is that the question?
That's the question.
Can we go? Or do you want to do it?
My understanding is yes, if you look back at the rate case that we had over the last 4-year cycle, and we had these 4-year projections going forward for this current case, those projections in that prior case were higher than what we received. If I recall correctly, not having it in front of me, I think those rate increases were somewhere in the 3.5% to 4% range projected, and now it's the 1.9%. And I'm just thinking off the top.
I'm going to use the real numbers. 4 years ago, we thought we were going to end up with 4 10% increases. The savings I've indicated is changing from 4 10% increases to a 2 and 3 4% increases. That's the results of the savings that we've put in place. Fairly significant. And those that information, by the way, Len mentioned, the Rate Commission saw it 4 years ago. The Rate Commission process from 4 years ago is still on our website. And you can either look there, or if you want to ask one of our staffs, we'll show you exactly what those projections looked like 4 years ago. Again, showing instead of the 2, 4, 4, and 4% you see here, we're anticipating with bonding 10% increases every year from 2021 through 2024. Those cost savings are what helped us, along with the consent decree change, it's what helped us to reduce the cost in this rate proposal.
So the answer to the question is yes.
Yes.
There were 2 comments on Facebook that indicate that MSD's rates are higher than the national average. First, is that true? And if so, why?
I do not know. Do you know?
Here you go.
Please do.
So it depends on where you're at in the program. Up until 4 years ago, we were at or below the median rate paid throughout the entire country, and we were in the middle of our consent decree. With the last rate proposal that brought us from 2017 through 2020, we creeped above the median number. You saw these numbers here that I had shown previously, and I'm going to get there. So they're somewhere in the numbers of 56 to 65. If you look at large cities throughout the country, some folks are paying $125 a month. Some folks are paying $25 a month. We are slightly above the median, but we are close to the median. And we're trying, especially with this last increase of just having increases of about inflation for the next 4 years, hoping we'll creep up on that. We'll get those data, the data from the appropriate agencies as to what actually has happened to rates in the past. We are slightly above the median, but we're going to try and get back down to it and below as quickly as we can and do these things as cost effectively as possible.
I think to answer the second part of that question, my answer to why they're slightly higher would probably be the age of the system, which was talked about earlier, deferred maintenance, and the consent decree.
Mr. Chairman, I think that's all the questions we have from our online viewers tonight.
Thank you. Any of the rate commissioners have any questions or comments? Mr. Hawes or
No, I don't have, Mr.
Shadle?
Thank
Nothing else online. I'd like to thank you, Mr. Holscher, for sharing the facts and the transparency of the information with us so we can all make an informed decision. Thanks to everybody for being here tonight. Our next public hearing will be conducted on June the 4th, 2019 at 6 p.m. at the Heights, which is the Richmond Heights Community Center. This public hearing is adjourned. Thank you.